Hi everybody, welcome to Tidalwave Studio. My name is Damiani, and today I would like to find out how AI mastering online compares to a human mastering engineer. So in the couple previous videos, I showed you how I recorded, produced, and mixed an acoustic song. Now up to the final step, mastering. Let's see if we can get a couple % more quality out of this recording by giving it out to a mastering engineer, or maybe letting it master by an AI mastering whatever. But what is actually mastering? Sometimes people ask me, can you master a song for me? And then I find out that they actually meant mixing. So I just want to clear up any confusion. Mixing is basically the process of taking the raw individual multi-tracks, so all the individual drum tracks, bass, guitars, vocals, whatever, and then you cook them up with effects, EQ, compression, volume, panning, and all the good stuff, so that at the end, as a result, you get a mix that is one stereo file. That's the process of mixing. Then mastering would be working further on the stereo file or these stereo files if you are putting different songs together as an album. And the process of mastering originally came from making sure that technical requirements are met in order to get a nice sounding, let's say, vinyl disc, for example. And over time, it changed a little bit, or let's say it became a combination of still meeting technical requirements, but also including some artistic choices. Now, do we really need mastering, and what can you expect from it? When I'm mixing, for example, I always mix as if there were no master. Means that I try to get a final result out of my mixing session that could be released just the way it is. So it is competitively loud, hopefully it has a balanced sound image, and it just sounds nice, just as if it was a finished record. So if I go to a mastering engineer to get some final touches on the mix, I always hope that there won't be too much change, because if I would have wanted more change, I would have done it in my mixing session, right? So I hope that there will be only subtle little elements improved, maybe some EQ correction, something that I missed, or maybe adding a little bit of loudness in a nicer way than I was able to do it, stuff like this. But some engineers also rely a little bit more on mastering. For example, some are mixing into a master bus without a lot of compression and limiting, but a more pure approach. So then mastering will have to do a little bit more heavy lifting to get a mix up to competitive loudness and maybe to get a more polished overall appearance. Now with my song here, I was pretty happy with the result, but hey, let's see what mastering can do for us. And now I decided to make a video to share my experience about comparing an actual human mastering engineer to an online AI mastering service. When I send out songs to get mastered, I usually send out two versions. One is my, as I call, client reference mix. This is the loud and proud mix with all mastering processing on top that the client had to agree upon. And then I render out a version with less limiting, that is a little bit more quiet and has a little bit of headroom, so that the mastering engineer has some room to work on. And I did exactly this here. I exported an extra version for mastering, and I uploaded this to different platforms online and sent it out to a mastering engineer as well. For the AI version, I decided to send it out to LANDR, which is a paid online service. And I also wanted to check out Bandlab, which is a free service where you get like 2 masters for free. And as a human mastering engineer, I contacted Markus Ebert, who is the admin of a big mastering group on Facebook called Mastering Pros. And he was up for the experiment, so I also sent him the unmastered version out. And I'm very curious to hear all the different results. So now if we compare AI mastering to human mastering, one big difference right from the start is the way that you interact. So when I was contacting Markus to talk about the mastering, I gave him a call. I had somebody listening to me. So we had a kind of exchange. I told him what I wanted to achieve. And yeah, we had a dialogue. On the other hand, when you're dealing with AI, you're dealing with the computer, with the screen, with the homepage. There is no real interaction. Now, to upload my songs to Markus, it was easy. I just uploaded my tracks and sent him a link, and he told me that he got it and was going to work on it. Now, with the AI platforms, on LANDR, I uploaded my track. I saw that there was some processing going on, even some magic applied. And then I had a preview of the master where I could A/B from the original to the mastered version and apply some changes if needed. And I opted to go for, let's say, a neutral setting because this is not a song to be pushed super hard. And I wanted to see what the default setting was going to be. On Bandlab, I also uploaded my track, and there you get a couple more options. So they just offer you different kinds of mastering. I chose to go with the so-called universal setting, and then I also wanted to see what the fire setting was all about. Now I loaded all these tracks and different versions into Pro Tools so that we can compare them, listen to them and see what's going on, what the differences are sonically. I would recommend that you wear some good headphones or listen to some decent speakers just so that you can hear the different nuances between the mixes. Not sure if all the differences will be clearly audible if you listen over phone or an iPad. First of all, I'm going to show you what my master was. So this was basically my client reference mix that I sent out to the artist to approve and would basically have been my final version if there was no mastering. So it's decently loud, it's not exaggerately loud, and it's, I think, well balanced. You could just release it the way it is. Now I show you the version that I made without the final limiting so that you get a feeling for what the mastering engineers and mastering robots were working with. So this is much quieter. You can see it has much more dynamics, is softer in volume, and leaves some headroom to apply some processing. I must also say that I didn't remove all the compression and EQ and all the stuff that I have on my mix bus. I just removed the final limiter who was giving some extra loudness. Now let's start with the AI versions. Let's see what LANDR made out of the song.
This is the story about a man. This is the story that has to be told. No one else ever seen his face. No one ever heard his name. And life can be a...
Okay, two things right up front. The loudness is pretty much the same, which is a cool thing. They didn't exaggerate the loudness thing. So that's already quite nice. The other thing is regarding the sonics. What I notice immediately is that they slimmed down the sound substantially. I have the feeling there is less fundamental information. The voice is a little bit thinner. It looks as if they had carved out a little bit in the bottom end and added some, I don't know, 2-3K or something, which gives it, for my taste, a little harshness. I was after a pretty natural sound, not too hyped, not too aggressive. I want a mellow and warm and earthy sounding record. The thing is now, how am I able to tell LANDR that I want a more earthy sound and a warmer sound? You only have basically the choice between more stuff or less stuff. So that's a little minus for my part. If you get what you're after, then it's great and it's not sounding bad. And I think if I would release it that way, no one would ever complain. But now if I A-B and I'm the one who mixed it and I know what I was after, I'm missing a little bit of volume in the low end, I'm missing a little bit of thickness, and I'm slightly annoyed by a slight harshness. Let's go further in the song and A-B a little bit more.
No one else ever seen his face, no one ever heard his name. And love can be a burden, so for him this is the vice. And if you like to see him, he's watching birds from his cabin.
Yeah, it's a little bit more aggressive. That may be not a too bad thing if you're listening on a phone, or depending on which kind of headphones you're listening, it may have a little bit more impact and more urgency. If that's what you're after, then it's fine. It's not exactly what I was after, but it's what I got. So let's check out what Bandlab did.
This is the story about a man. This is the story that has to be told. No one else ever seen his face, no one ever heard his name. And love can be a burden, so for him this is the vice. And if you like to see him, he's watching birds from his cabin seat, and he's been...
Yeah, the Bandlab version is less aggressive. It's a little bit softer in volume, but it stayed a little bit closer to the warmer feeling. So not sure which of both I would prefer. So far, I would prefer my master version because it's basically what I intended to do. And the other versions, they are changing stuff slightly. The Bandlab version is a little bit more quiet. The LANDR version is a little bit too aggressive and a little bit too thin for my taste. I wonder if I had chosen a more aggressive Bandlab version of this universal thing, maybe with a little bit more loudness, maybe it would have come close to what I originally had. Let's check out the fire setting. Okay, that's terrible. That's terrible. That has far too much lows. It's very scooped. I don't know. Maybe that could work if you have like a very, very flat mix of, I don't know, maybe a hip hop track or something that is very, very flat and would need some big low end and didn't have any from the start. Maybe that would have been a good choice. But here it's really like no mids or no presence anymore, just a big bass bump. That's not really working at all.
His face, no one ever heard his name. And love can be a bird.
Okay, that's absurd. That's not usable. It's just too much low end. It's far too soft. There is no mid presence left anymore, so we can skip the fire version completely. Now it's going to be interesting. Now we are coming to Markus' human mastering. I'm very curious to listen to that.
This is the story about a man.
Okay, right away what I like here is the aesthetics are not changed. It's still warm and earthy, no abrasive harshness. And what I like is what has happened to the bass. Let me listen to that again. I'm paying attention now to the instrument bass and the bass drum. Yeah, he somewhat boosted the fundamental of the bass a bit. It's more substantial. I really like that. We have more mass on the bass. It's far more audible, which is actually a cool thing. Let's listen a little bit more.
A burden, so for him this is the vice. And if you like to see him, he's watching birds from his cabin seat. And he's been alright, and he's been okay, and he's been so strong, singing his song.
Okay, also it's interesting because the change is somewhat very subtle, but also very obvious for me. So the bass is a big thing, and then what I like is we get some sparkle, some details come out a little bit better, like the ghost notes on the snare are a little bit finer. I can hear a little bit further into the music, which I like. The voice is still very natural. So no, this is the kind of mastering that I enjoy getting. So it's basically my mix, but as if you put a little bit of varnish on top without exaggerating. Let's listen to a different section in the song.
Some are blind, but want to see the truth in the lion thief. The solitary man is an island in a raging sea. A body on the air.
Yeah, I think especially the weight in the low end is really nice. I really like that. I'm going to switch through the different versions again in this section of the song.
Some are blind, but want to see the truth in the lion thief. The solitary man is an island in a raging sea. A body on the end, he won't believe. Some are blind, but want to see the truth in the lion thief. The solitary man is an island in a raging sea. A body on the end.
Yeah, the more I listen, the more I come to the same conclusion. So if I would have to rank these mixes and say, okay, which one I like most and why, then my favorite would be the real human master. Mainly because of the low end. It's just so thick without being boomy. It's very tight and controlled. This is something that I often get back when I get back a master, that the low end is nicely tight and controlled without being boomy. And then you get a little bit more clarity overall without any harshness. And that's a big deal because just cranking the highs, yeah, you get more detail, but you also get often harshness, like a little bit in this LANDR version. So the first would be like the human mastering. Then I like my kind of client reference mix as second best. And then I would say the LANDR version because it's not too shabby. It's not especially my cup of tea for this song now, but it may work well maybe for a metal song or rock song where some boosted aggression and maybe not too much low end can be a nice thing because you just get more urgency and more aggression in the song. Then, yeah, the Bandlab universal setting, which is, yeah, it's not terribly great, but it's not terribly bad. And then the fire version, that's completely, that's completely useless. Now, as a final thing, I made another little experiment because usually I mix into a complete chain of stuff. So I have multiple compressors, EQs, and a lot of stuff that you can see in the mix decomposition of this song. I wanted to see what an AI mastering would do if I send out a mix without any of that bus processing. I'm going to show you what this very raw mix sounds like. also compare it to my, let's call it, master version with all the stuff in so that you hear the difference. And then I'm going to see what LANDR made out of this pretty raw track and how that compares.
The truth in the lion thief. The solitary man is an island in a agency. Some are blind but want to see the truth in the lion thief. The solitary man is an island in a agency. But in the end,
this was just an experiment. It's not really fair to send something completely raw out to a mastering service, because if you're mixing into a complete mastering chain, as I like to call it, you get that glue, everything sits nicely in the right spot. And if you take that away, everything falls apart. The voice is here, the instruments are somewhere. You lose all the cohesiveness that you have. But it was a fun experiment, but that's also completely useless, this mastering from this very raw track. But at the end of the day, that is something that maybe one or the other will send out in the hope that whoever is going to master will fix and make like this record-ready sound out of it. But if you ask me, that's not exactly how it's working. Don't expect too much from mastering. You can expect some, and sometimes you can really polish up a mediocre mix to something really quite nice. But if you're missing the complete cohesion between the tracks, if nothing is really sitting in the right space, that's nothing that you can really easily fix in mastering. That's not a nice task for whoever has to do it. And as we can see here, LANDR couldn't do anything to really put back everything into place. But a fun experiment. So yeah, what is the takeaway of all this? I'm not a big friend of AI whatsoever, because as an artistic soul, I like to be surrounded by people. I like to talk to people and have the exchange and, have some conversation going, some back and forth, just staring at the screen is not the same thing. You don't get a real feedback. You don't get an opinion. You don't get taste, nothing like this. But I must admit that the LANDR version is not too shabby. Would not be my cup of tea, but it's not too shabby. I prefer much more the human version, and I will continue to go to real mastering engineer if there is a budget for it. But hey, if you are very tight on budget and only have like $10, at least it's worth a shot, and see if you like it better than whatever you come up with out of your DAW. I hope this was insightful for you and helps you maybe take a decision when your record is ready for mastering stage, if you want to contact a human professional, or if you want to give any online service a shot. Yeah, if you liked it, leave me a comment and leave me a hello. I always enjoy reading your comments. And until then, see you in the next video. Take care and bye-bye.